Okay, so I haven't watched this video yet, but I've had people tell me how it already turns out. I also know for a fact Kyotium actually agreed with this result, which is kind of funny, because he doesn't seem like the type of guy that would. But regardless, I'm going to watch this video. I'm sure you already know what this is if you're clicked on this video. I doubt you'd watch someone basically react and try to debunk it if you didn't already watch the original. But essentially, Goji guy claims that Camazotz beats Monster X, which sounds a little insane to me just to hear that. And it's not just because Monster X is a bigger villain in his respective verse than Camazotz. It's just that I don't see any way for this to be a fair fight. Not saying Camazotz is weak, but I mean, the Final Wars is pretty comparable to even high tiers in the Monsterverse. I know some people are going to heavily disagree with me on that one, but it's pretty fair most of the time. So how a low tier from Monsterverse, well, not really low tier, more like a mid tier for the Monsterverse, would beat a very high tier for the Final Wars movie, it's a little odd to me how that would even happen. But regardless, I want to make it very clear I'm not making this to mock Goji guy in any way, shape, or form. And if you watch this video, agree with me, and then want to go mock him, don't do that. I don't want to be involved in any of that if you do that. I'm going to heavily discourage it. I can't stop you. I'm not your dad, but, like, come on. Act like adults if you're going to be arguing over a bat beating a bony skeleton dragon. Like, that's a little immature to go try to cyberbully a guy because of it. So don't do that. Just don't. That's dumb. And then also, I'm not trying to start any beef with Goji guy. I made 2 videos on his stuff already. And although it's probably a little not exactly pleasant in at least one of the 2, I tried to at least be somewhat civil in my conversation with him after it, in the comments of that very video. So, yeah, if Goji guy does somehow see this, I'm not trying to start any beef with you, dude. I don't agree with this take. And I'm saying that before you even watching the video. Maybe he found something new on Camazotz I didn't know before. Maybe I'll end up actually agreeing with him. But as of now, I don't really get this take at all. And I'm sure KOTM's probably going to have something to say on it, as he's already made a post on how he agrees with it. So maybe he also found something on Camazotz I didn't know before. But as of right now, unless they know something I don't, which is potentially very likely, I'm going to have to say I don't agree with this take at all. And I'm going to try to figure out how they came to this conclusion to begin with. Also, quick disclaimer, I only have the audio for his video on this because my phone doesn't want to download the full video, even though I did have it fully downloaded. It just refuses to upload it to YouTube Create. So sorry I can't have the full images and all that playing, but the whole audio is here. So, I mean, if that's something that's going to make you not want to watch this, I mean, just leave, okay? But yeah, I only have the audio for this video because my phone decided it just didn't want to work today. Anyways, on to actually getting to the point of this whole thing and watching, or rather listening to what Goji guy has to say.
Monster X, one of the coolest and most menacing kaiju in the Final Wars universe, and one of my personal favorite kaiju ever. Between his fighting style, to his design, to his entrance, he is undoubtedly one of the coolest kaiju ever. And for many years, no one came close to this man's style, his presence, his aura. That was until the Monsterverse cooked up their own bony titan. Introducing Kingdom Kong, we met Camazotz, the Bat Titan. This kaiju, at least for me, has matched Monster X in terms of epicness. His design, peak. His introduction, peak. His story, peak. He is truly the best Monsterverse comic titan. Now, I know what you're thinking. Goji guy, Goji Center said Rodan beats Camazotz. How could you possibly wank Camazotz to make it a fair match? Alright, well, firstly, I don't even need to wank. Camazotz is just that guy.
Julian!
And secondly, Goji Center was wrong. Joe, buddy, you're a great homie. Hank and Indom are best buds. But, with that being said, Goji Center downplayed Camazotz to another dimension. I was going to make a video on Rodan versus Camazotz, but it's just not fair at all. 8 times out of 10, Camazotz would just troll him and take the W. So I thought, why not pit him against somebody with just as much aura? Someone just as powerful as himself.
Oh boy.
Hello everyone, it's your host Goji Guy, and today we're pitting 2 of my favorite kaiju into a ring. Not only that, but we'll be putting some respect on Camazotz's name. So before we all go to the comments and how I'm wanking him because Goji Center said he loses to Rodan, just wait, dude, let me explain. Let me at least give him a chance. So with all that out of the way, what would these 2 beasts be competing for? As always, we have strength, speed, durability, agility, abilities, intelligence, battle intelligence, and for this battle analysis, we also have battle advantages. So without further ado, let's start the video that was 90% made for the fact that the thumbnail will be really cool to see.
Understandable, I guess.
Camazotz versus Monster X. Who would win? Starting with strength, who can lift and push more? Let's start with the underdog, Camazotz. Camazotz has shown in his first appearance that he's able to break through a mountain with ease. Keep in mind, he was far underneath it. Later, once his battle with Kong commences, he's able to easily lift Kong into the air. Monster vs. Kong weighing in at 90,000 tons. He's later able to overpower Kong while on the ground, and again lifts Kong with just his tail. And that's about it for Camazotz.
Before he moves on to talk about Monster X, I would like to point out that you can technically get Camazotz a little higher than this if you cross-scale him with Muto Prime, who he should be somewhat relative to in physical strength. Even though he's significantly littler, even Mothra and like Rodan have some semi-scaling to Ghidorah, and by proxy some semi-scaling to Godzilla. All the quote-unquote alpha tier titans or alpha titans within the Monsterverse are at least somewhat relative in physical strength, even if they don't look like they should be. Even kaiju like Tiamat can somewhat rival Kong or Muto Prime in a physical fight for a little bit. Obviously, Muto Prime would still be a little bit stronger, and Godzilla would be the strongest physically, technically. But there's still some relativity between all of them. Like, it's not perfectly even, but they could all kind of compete. That's what I'm trying to say here.
So on to the man himself, Monster X. Monster X, as we see in his battle with Godzilla, is able to easily overpower him and lift him by his arms. Final Wars Godzilla weighing in at 55,000 metric tons. Final Wars Godzilla earlier in the film being able to throw Kumanga over the horizon. Kumanga weighing in at 30,000 metric tons. So, who wins strength? Well, it's hard to say. While you could lean towards Monster X due to the Kumanga feat, if you want to play like that, then we'd also have to bring up the fact that Camazotz was able to overpower Kong, who is stronger than his GVK counterpart, GVK Kong having been drugged. And even so, he was able to push open 2 million ton doors. Yeah.
I'll give him credit for this, because yeah, Camazotz is likely maybe physically stronger, but that's more so cross-scaling with Kong, which is perfectly valid. He did fight Kong, even if he did somewhat rely on disorienting and weakening him before actually engaging in physical combat most of the time, as that's kind of his whole thing. But Monster X at the same time, the Monster X form isn't the maximum of his physical power. He gets physically stronger if he transforms into Kaiser Ghidorah. I'm assuming he's just ignoring Kaiser Ghidorah here, which is a little weird, seeing as that's a natural ability of his and not an amp. Like the Red Spiral Ray that Heisei has, the Burning G-Spark Ray, or Kaiser form that we see Final Wars have, or anything like that. Kaiser Ghidorah is a natural form. It's a perfectly natural ability of his that he would always have access to. So taking it away is a little odd. Yes, I know he's fighting a weaker opponent, but like realistically in a fight between the two, if he was pushed far enough, he would enter that form. Nothing's going to stop him from doing that. It's a normal ability of his. It's like taking Super Saiyan away from Goku, or taking the supercharged state away from like Lord vs. Godzilla. It's almost the same as taking supercharged evolved away from evolved Godzilla in a way, as that's natural ability of his now. Regardless, I do see his point here. Camazotz does scale to better stuff, but Monster X's whole scaling and his whole defense here would be that he upscales stuff. Camazotz somewhat scales to Kong, and probably upscales Wicked Kong's physical feats to some degree, even if it's a little vague, as again, Camazotz does rely on disorienting and weakening opponents. As I don't think anyone's going to argue that even though there is a level of relativity between Alpha Titans, that a Kong versus Camazotz fight that would be strictly melee on the ground wouldn't go Kong's favor very quickly. But Monster X's whole defense would be that he just upscales Godzilla's base and then has to fight a Godzilla after he gets physically stronger through amping himself throughout the fight through his combat adaptability. And then the fact that Monster X also adapts that way and has a transformation that boosts his power even further to the point where he's basically one-shotting an amped up Godzilla. So, yeah, ignoring Kizar, yeah, I'd say Camazotz is maybe physically stronger than Monster X. There's still a debate to be had there, but if you add in Kizar, I don't think Camazotz is physically stronger than that. This is ignoring that you can kind of scale Final Wars to his own atomic breath in terms of physicals, which is a little shaky, but that is something you could do, and the Mothership feat would be on the same caliber, if not massively higher than the Doors feat, due to the fact that the Mothership's not only far larger than both those doors combined, but like it's made out of alien metal, and all alien metals in Godzilla tend to be pretty heavy, like space titanium from the Showa era, which is around as heavy and around as strong, if not, it's actually significantly stronger than titanium. So you can argue that there's arguments for both sides, but personally I don't think Camazotz is the physically stronger of the two if you add Kizar. That's my argument here. Without Kizar, yeah, I get his point.
So it's hard to say. Camazotz can lift more, but Monster X can lift easier due to his actual arms. So strength is a tie. Next up is speed. Again, start with Camazotz. Camazotz has shown that he can fight on par with Kong. Kong being a very skilled and quick fighter. And when it comes to his flight speed, that is something I'm really happy to go over, as Goji Center didn't really cover it in depth. As you see, Camazotz's Hellswarm, aka his minions, are able to catch up to and surprise pilots flying Lockheed Martin F-35 Lightning IIs. Said planes are able to reach speeds of Mach 1.6, and Camazotz, just due to his much larger size, would be significantly faster than his Hellswarm, meaning Camazotz would likely be in the Mach 2 to Mach 3 ranges of speed. Now into Monster X. Monster X also shows that he's a very skilled and quick fighter, being able to outdo and catch Final Wars Godzilla off guard. And for his flight speed, well, we don't really know. We don't even fully know if he can fly. We know he can levitate, but that doesn't exactly mean flying. So overall speed will go to Camazotz.
Okay, we might have a major problem here. I'm sure he's going to cover this later, or at least I really hope he will, but I'm not for certain, which is what kind of scares me about this video. But if he actually doesn't cover this later, I'm going to cover it now. Reaction speed. If he didn't if he doesn't actually get to reaction speed later, then that's a huge problem with this debate. Because it's essential with the Final Wars debate, because Final Wars relies heavily on that for similar verses. Reason for this is quite simple. Reaction speed is a major part of just speed in general. Although I will admit Camazotz is faster in Monster X. I don't think anyone's going to really challenge that. I mean, one flies at like massively hypersonic speeds consistently. One walks around and like runs sometimes. And yeah, he did bring up that Monster X could maybe fly, and I do believe that he could fly, at least in the Kaiser Ghidorah form, as in every other appearance other than the movie, Kaiser Ghidorah could fly. That includes the Evangelion, or Evo, whatever it's called. You know what I'm talking about. That crossover, the Godzilla vs. that, Shin Godzilla, for some reason, being the Godzilla chosen for that. I think I know why, but, you know, it's a little odd to choose the weakest Godzilla. Anyway, in that crossover, Kaiser Ghidorah is shown to be able to fly. It's a different version of him. He looks a little smaller than normal, but he could fly. And then, in the IDW comics, it's shown consistently that he's able to fly. And I believe they show him fly in Monster X, maybe, but I know for a fact he can fly in Kaiser Ghidorah, because there's like 10 panels where he's just up in the sky. But ignoring all that, yeah, Monster X is crazy in reaction speed. Not normal movement speed, but reaction speed. Whereas Camazotz most likely isn't. Although Camazotz should be relative to at least a weakened Kong's reaction speed, which is low FTL. He's able to dodge, well, potentially, no, low FTL. As he's able to dodge Godzilla's atomic breath after it's fired. You could argue there's some relativity with GXK Kong, who can also dodge the frostbite breath, which is also likely light speed, as it's described as a kind of Cairo laser, which is a laser, just one that freezes stuff instead of heats it up. I feel like that's obvious. But yeah, that's really all Camazotz has for speed, whereas characters in Final Wars, particularly Kaiju, are shown consistently to at least be able to dodge lasers. This comes mainly from Godzilla himself, who Monster X upscales. I can't overstate that enough. By upscale, I don't just mean he's stronger than, I mean he's fast enough to basically blitz him during their fight at points. At least till Godzilla's adaptability kicks in, which will rapidly boost his power. So, yeah, Monster X is faster than a guy, Godzilla, who can dodge light speed attacks from Gigan repeatedly. He's able to do this consistently. There's other kaijus like Mothra that should be able to do the same, and Monster X is noticeably above that. So, by proxy, Monster X is upscaling a guy that should be at least approaching Kong's level. Even if you don't buy that Final Wars Godzilla is as fast as Kong in reaction speed, which he should be at least approaching there, Monster X would upscale a guy that's close regardless. So, off that alone, I would argue that Monster X is the faster of the two in reaction speeds, just in general. There's also the fact that in Kaiser Ghidorah form, he was faster than Godzilla, even more so, and he was able to stalemate his beam and, like, react to it consistently. This was an amped up Godzilla. So, in Kaiser Ghidorah, there's no question about it at all. He is faster than Camazotz in reaction speed. Not in movement speed, but he's able to react far faster. In Monster X, he shouldn't be that much faster, but he's still faster. There's also arguments involving Godzilla's perception speed and some of the statements involving the meteor that Godzilla apparently saw in slow motion. I won't get into those much here, as that's very confusing, and it would take a huge chunk of this video for a relatively small part of this debate that other stuff is actually more important than, such as the overall power between the two, if he gets to that. But yeah, overall, reaction speed should go to Monster X. Normal speed, yeah, Camazotz takes that definitely. He's way faster, way lighter, and he flies consistently. But reaction speed, I don't think Camazotz is faster than Monster X in reactions. You can argue that he is, and you could argue that Gigan's light speed attacks don't really scale to Godzilla, as admittedly it is a little shakier than Kong pretty blatantly dodging the atomic breath after it's fired. But from what I've seen of both characters and some of the other implications I'm not going to get into yet, or maybe at all during this video, Final Wars is consistently a little above the Monsterverse in terms of reaction speeds.
Now onto durability. Who can take more hits? Camazotz has shown that he's able to take an absolute beating from Kong when he was enraged. Kong being able to alone punch with the force of a 4.2 magnitude earthquake, much less being slammed full force by his arms. And after losing, which he would have won by the way if it wasn't for the humans, Camazotz was thrown all the way to the hollow earth and survived. Or, well, at least there's nothing saying he's dead. Now onto Monster X. Firstly, Monster X withstood being slammed into the ground. Now he didn't take re-entry, as he was inside of the meteor, but still, the fact that he took that hard of an impact is impressive. Monster X also tanks Godzilla's beam straight to the face. This same beam is able to push back the Exilian mothership, which, by my guess, would weigh in at around 1,000,000 tons.
I'm sorry, what? 1,000,000 tons for a spaceship the size of a city? No offense to Goji guy, but there's no way in hell that spaceship is lighter than the 2 doors that Kong pushed. I mean, just look at the difference in size between the two. That's ignoring that metal is heavier than stone 9 times out of 10. And there's no evidence to support that the ship was made of a weak metal. In fact, there's evidence to support it isn't, as it tanked the atomic breath. The same atomic breath that was able to slow down that meteor. For reference, that meteor, in the simulation that shows what would happen if it hit Earth, would hit with around dwarf star levels of power just through the sheer magnitude of the hit. It would overpower the Earth's GPE so much, it would be around a dwarf star level hit. And Godzilla can slow that down to barely flattening a city. And this spaceship can tank that beam. That's pretty insane. Even with lower ends for the meteor, if you don't really buy the dwarf star metas, it would still hit with enough power to at least break the planet to being uninhabitable, which is around multi-continental to moon level bare minimum, and Godzilla can slow that level of force down with a single atomic breath. Yeah, it's a charged up one, more charged up than the one that pushed the ship, but it's not like the power difference there is insane. It's actually probably not even that much, as Godzilla's amping himself up throughout the fight, and he also just gauntlet ran like 19 kaiju to get to it. So, no, that's not, it can't be a light metal, and if it's not a light metal, it can't be that light. It would have to fundamentally be really, really heavy, potentially in the billions of tons. My estimated weight for a ship that big would have to be at least more heavy than an entire city. Just the average weight of an entire city, buildings and all, as it's pure metal, and it's almost as large as a city. We also have to factor in it's most likely a heavier metal, as it has to be heavy to be that durable, unless you're arguing some like vibranium super light, super durable stuff, which it might be because it's fiction, but there's no way it's only 1,000,000 tons. There's no way it's that light. I mean, for reference, the heaviest man-made building is 4,000,000 tons, and it's not only technically smaller than that in overall entire volume, but it's not made entirely of metal. If something man-made, made of lighter materials that has less volume than that overall, is 4 times as heavy as your estimated weight has to be wrong. There's no way it's that light. It fundamentally can't be. Now, I don't know the exact weight of it, because that's a crazy-ass calc to pull out of my ass out of nowhere, but it's heavier than those 2 doors. There's no way it can't. It has to be heavier than those 2 doors. There's no way it's not. It just physically cannot be lighter than it can be. There's no way. There's no way it's the same weight as one of those 2 doors. That's impossible.
He takes many blows from Godzilla and shows no damage, and he later takes a beating to the face from Godzilla. And really the only thing he's ever shown pain from is Gigan's saws. So it's close, but Monster X just has so many more feats as of now. We'll just have to wait for Legacy Monster Season 2. So Monster X walks away with durability.
Also, about the meteor feat, that you can technically get up to dwarf star, but if you want to be more conservative, I guess you can lower it down to just planetary, moon, or even multi-continental if you really want to downplay. It's outright stated that the humans have no weapons that could stop Godzilla, but they could technically stop that meteor. So the humans have weapons on that level that Godzilla is outright stated above. Just want to point that one out, just to further back that Monster X is extremely durable. Also, Camazotz, I know he's like an Alpha Titan and all, and I was talking about how they are all kind of relative. Camazotz shouldn't really be as durable as like the highest of high tier Alpha Titans, because there's a clear difference in durability between Alpha Titans. Oh, the physical strength and overall attack potency, at least physically, is shown to be at least somewhat relative. No one's going to argue Kong's more durable than Godzilla, or that Scar King's more durable than Shimo. That's just not going to happen. Even Ghidorah is blatantly more durable than any Titan that isn't Godzilla or Shimo. It's just obvious by looking at him. And obviously looking at the feats, this stuff he's able to shrug off, like Godzilla's atomic breath for a prolonged blast while Godzilla was amped. Like, if Kong got hit by that, I don't think anyone's going to argue he would even have survived it. So, I'm not going to use the Camazotz should be relative to other Alpha Titans argument for his durability, as many Alpha Titans, like Mothra and Rodan, are just shown to be less durable than Godzilla, Shimo, and Ghidorah. So, if anyone was wondering why I didn't bring that up for Camazotz, that's why.
Next up is agility. And this one is hard to say, as you don't really see too much from Camazotz, as, well, you know, it's a comic. Well, you could make the assumption he should be able to move like Rodan, we just don't know for sure. So, Monster X takes agility. Now, onto abilities. Who has a better arsenal? Camazotz shows in Kingdom Kong that he has the ability to fly. No duh. He has his Sonic Screech, which is one of, if not the most powerful sound-based attack in the Monsterverse. Possibly be more powerful than the Muto Primes. But that's up to you, if you want to take Arvid Nelson's statement as fact or not. His Screech is able to make Kong's ears bleed and cause him immense pain. And in the DC Comics, which aren't canon to the timeline but abilities should be, Camazotz has shown some sort of beam. Now, it's not specified what it is, but it's likely a condensed and magnified Sonic Screech. He has his echolocation, as he can't see that well, which may seem like a setback, but given how he did against Kong, it won't really matter much. He also has his Hellswarm, a massive army of Camazotz-like kaiju that protect Camazotz with their life. And finally, he has the ability to manipulate storms, allowing him to come out during the day, such as what he did with King Ghidorah Storm. Now, onto Monster X. He of course has his gravity beams, a useful and powerful long-range attack. He has his levitation and, yeah, that's it. So, I think it's clear that Camazotz steals this category.
No. Okay, so starting off, he's using DC Comics to just basically assert that Camazotz can condense his stream down into a beam. If we're following that chain of logic, then yeah, he could fly, because in IDW Comics and in the non-canon crossover with Evangelion, he's able to fly. Monster X and Kaiser Ghidorah can both fly. Also, Kaiser Ghidorah is a natural ability of Monster X. I know he's probably ignoring that for this, but fundamentally that doesn't make any sense if you're going to use crossovers. Like, you should give both characters everything they can have, and Kaiser Ghidorah would amp his abilities up by like a trillion different things. It would add a stronger version of the gravity beam and all that. Not to mention, there's like stuff within the games that Monster X pops up in that is just blatantly new abilities. There's a lot of stuff you can give Monster X that would level this whole playing field out. And even then, some of the abilities he gave Camazotz don't really matter here. Echolocation, what is that going to do? I mean, it helps him see. Just say he could see, because that's what it is. It's just his version of sight. Does sight count as ability for Monster X? No. Camazotz has poor eyesight. That's why he needs echolocation. It's a natural thing. It's not like a special combat ability or anything. All that really means is Monster X can blow his eyes out, and the guy, he can still see. That's the only thing it would help Camazotz with. And even then, it's actively a nerf to his eyesight, because there's a reason he needs echolocation to begin with. That's like saying a blind man has a amp because he has like a special like hearing thing, like his hearing's better, so he has an amp on a normal person in a fight despite, you know, being blind. That doesn't make any sense. And also, Camazotz flight being in a special ability category along with like energy attacks, does that really count though? Because I mean, it's a natural thing for him. It's just him flying. It's not like a special attack or anything. It's just naturally how he moves. He's slower on the ground. Does running count as an ability for Monster X? Because he could do that. Camazotz can't. I don't get that. There's also the fact that Monster X should have some level of regeneration, just like Godzilla. He should also have some form of energy absorption, as he's a Ghidorah, and Ghidorahs in every single Godzilla series can do that. He also can drain energy while in Kaiser Ghidorah form, and there's no evidence to support he couldn't do that in Monster X. He should at least have a weaker variant of it. And like there's a lot of things that he should have that is just never expanded upon. But like Monster X isn't like one trick pony like he's being told, like he's being like shown here. And Camazotz isn't a Swiss Army knife either. Some of the stuff he's given Camazotz shouldn't really count as an ability because it doesn't make sense to count them in the same category as energy attacks and like special things that defy physics, like Monster X being able to fly without wings. Does that really count as an ability? Not really. But should it be considered different than biological flight? Yeah, because it doesn't make sense that he could do that. And then the same can be said for Camazotz's beam and his normal breath being considered different abilities. Again, Kaiser Ghidorah has a stronger variation of his own attack, and the fact that transformation is not even being considered here is just odd to me. As yeah, Monster X and Kaiser Ghidorah are typically stated and like shown in videos to be different kaiju, but they're the same guy. It's just a transformation. That's all it is. They're not different characters. They're the same character. It's just one is Monster X getting serious for a fight. That's what Kaiser Ghidorah is. So overall, yeah, I don't agree with that breakdown. I don't think we should consider a character being able to fly because he has wings as an extra ability, then ignore that he'd be worse on the ground than the other character that can't fly normally. Or that we should only use comic iterations of a character's abilities for one character and ignore them for the other to give a kind of unfair advantage. To be fair, Goji Guy might have just not known about IDW comics. Or he might consider, since IDW is an entirely different canon, that the Kaiser Ghidorah in that ability shouldn't be the same as the one from the movie. But if you look at characters in IDW outside Godzilla himself, every single character pretty much has movie-accurate abilities. Like Destroya in IDW, his abilities are virtually identical to what we see in the movie. They don't even give him the chest beam because we don't even see it in the movie. We only see that in the manga. Space Godzilla, pretty much the same stuff. His energy absorption is shown to be a little different as he's able to absorb stuff like black holes, but that was already implied in the films. They just expand upon it. And then in non-canon crossovers that aren't really crossovers with Final Wars, but still have Kaiser Ghidorah there for whatever reason, Kaiser Ghidorah, again, can fly. So I feel like we should if we're going to use stuff that isn't canon to the main Monsterverse timeline, we should use stuff that isn't canon to the Final Wars timeline as well for Kaiser Ghidorah. Because without it, I feel like it just gives Camazotz an unfair advantage here. And even then, again, I just don't agree with how these abilities are getting named off. Why is flight an ability, but being able to move on the ground faster than a crippled old bat not an ability? How is Camazotz's echolocation ability, but Monster X having blatantly better eyesight not an ability for him in his favor? Like it just seems a little biased to consider stuff like that abilities, but not consider that some of those abilities have their own drawbacks due to them being more based in Camazotz's own biology and how he's set up as a creature, and not overall in his own like special abilities that defy physics. Like the way I see it is, it'd be like if you have a human and an eagle fight, and you give the eagle flying as an ability, but you don't give the human better speed on the ground or throwing stuff as an ability, but you'll give the eagle flight and like better eyesight in his ability, but you just ignore everything else for the human. That's what I'm getting here. It just seems a little odd to be giving one creature weird advantages because of their biology, while completely ignoring that there's very obvious drawbacks to that very biology against the other creatures, as they're fundamentally different things.
Now into intelligence. And, well, neither of them are necessarily smart, but they aren't dumb either. It's just that neither of them have been put into a situation where they have to show their thinking and problem-solving capabilities. So, for intelligence, it's a tie. Next up is battle intelligence. This one is interesting. Monster X has shown he's a very skilled martial artist, and knows how to land repeated and effective blows on his enemies. He knows when and where to use his beams, and is able to work in unison for a bit with Gigan. Now on to Camazotz. Camazotz, firstly, like Batman himself, goes through prep, such as bringing Ghidorah's Storm to Skull Island so that he can easily come out during the day. He's able to outmaneuver and outplay Kong in battle, and when Kong finally gets the upper hand, Camazotz is able to play dirty, such as using his tail when he wasn't able to use his legs. He's also able to work in unison with his Hellswarm, making it hard for any man-made weapons to get close to Camazotz. So for battle intelligence, it's super close. So again, it's a tie.
I do mostly agree with his breakdown on both intelligence and battle intelligence. The main difference between these two is, although both of them are very intelligent in combat, they're fundamentally different characters just outright. Kaiser Ghidorah, although his name pretty much means like beyond a king, He's not a king. He's not even the ruler of what he's worth. He's an underling. He's a soldier. That's what he is. He's a weapon. That's his whole thing. Just like Gigan, he's a weapon of the Exilians. That's his whole character. He's a soldier. He's nothing more. He's nothing less. And just like a soldier, he's going to act like a soldier. He's not going to like plan things out because he's the one taking orders, not the one giving them. Whereas Camazotz is the opposite. He's the king of his little hellswarm. He's the leader of his army. So he's going to act more like a leader, whereas Monster X is going to act more like a kind of commander, not necessarily like a general, but like a commander of his forces, which is typically just going to be Gigan's idiot ass. But yeah, they're going to act differently, but from what we've seen, both of them are around the same level of intelligence, which I 100% agree with. They're both smarter than you'd think they'd be at first glance, but not like human intelligence outright. I do think Monster X is a little smarter, personally, although he doesn't have as much freedom to be as smart as he wants to be, as he's, again, an underling, not a leader. He still knows human martial arts somehow, and is able to fight like a human, unlike Camazotz, who's, although he's smart in the way he fights, he still fights like a wild animal. Which is why I would say Monster X is likely a little bit smarter, but it's not such a big difference that it's going to, like, be him outsmarting Camazotz the whole time. Camazotz is also a better planner, as he already explained. So if this fight does have prep time, I would say that does give Camazotz a pretty decent advantage. Whereas the only thing I can see Monster X doing with prep time is getting more Exilian underlings to work with him. And the only one of them that's really worth anything in this fight would be Gigan. And really only upgraded Gigan, in my opinion, because I don't think base Gigan from Final Wars is really that good. He's definitely stronger than the average kaiju on Earth, but he's not like, he's not great. He got one-shotted. There's a reason he got one-shotted. It's because he's not that strong.
And now finally onto advantages. So what do I mean for this category? Well, we will be discussing the blatant advantages each of these kaiju have over the other, and what attacks they could do that could significantly affect the other. So let's start with Camazotz. So firstly, Camazotz would have the visibility advantage, which I know sounds odd given, well, he's blind. But let me explain. Now for this fight to even happen, Camazotz of course would have to bring his storm, as he can't go out during the day. Because if you're going to argue that he shouldn't be able to have that ability, then you're saying Monster X should have an immediate advantage, to the point where Camazotz can't really even do anything.
Hey, editing Goji guy here. I want to clarify, I know this category is advantages, and I just said that would give Monster X an unfair advantage, and that's the entire point of this category. I mean more in the sense of, like, without the storm, Camazotz just would die. Like he just can't fight, so it would just be stupid unfair. Like, if you want to take away a storm, Monster X wins. There's your answer. So, I want to clarify that, because recording didn't really clarify it.
But back to what we're saying, while Monster X has fine vision, he would be at a disadvantage due to the massive storm, as he would have to rely on his eyes to see, meaning Camazotz could easily hide in the clouds. And since Camazotz relies on echolocation rather than normal vision, he would have no issue finding out where Monster X is in the storm. Another advantage he has is knowing where Monster X is about to attack from, as again, thanks to his echolocation, it's really impossible for Monster X to sneak up on him. Plus,
Couple things wrong here. He can still sneak up on him. Echolocation isn't like a sonar around you entirely. You shoot it out of your... He's using his mouth to do it. It goes in the forward direction. If he's turned around, Monster X could still sneak up on him if he found him. Also, the whole argument for why he needs the storm to come out in the day, you could also just do this fight at night. Just want to point that out. But arguing that taking away his storm is an unfair advantage in Monster X's favor is the same as not giving Monster X Kaiser form, which... From how the video's been going, I'm assuming he's not giving him that at all, which I kind of thought he was probably not going to do that earlier, but now it's basically confirmed. It's the same argument. It kind of goes against his own logic here. I'm not going to, like, overly attack him for this, because I feel like anyone would pretty much agree that Kaiser Ghidorah himself and his full power would annihilate pretty much most of the Monsterverse low tiers and mid tiers. With it taking probably some high tiers could beat him. I personally think Supercharged Godzilla would beat him. I think Amped Ghidorah has a shot, but I think it's way closer than a lot of people give it credit for. Although I would say, honestly, I have Kaiser in that fight sometimes. Like, I think Kaiser could beat Amped Ghidorah. That's how powerful Kaiser is if you really break down the scaling. I don't think Kong could beat Kaiser Ghidorah, and I don't think Camazotz, Rodan, or Mothra could either. I think Shimo could, and Supercharged Evolved Godzilla could, and Thermo could. But, yeah, it takes, like, ultra high tiers to actually beat him. I think base Godzilla has a shot, I guess, but he's not doing, like, way better than Final Wars did. They're pretty even up until Evolved and Thermo became things. well, things that you bring up in a debate at least, but yeah, I get why he's not using Kaiser, but that argument kind of goes against his logic for not using Kaiser here. Just want to point that out, because realistically, Kaiser should be a factor in this debate, as it's a natural ability of Monster X. It's something he can use in any fight he's in if he really wanted to.
His Hellswarm. Given they follow Camazotz, they would be there ready to help defend. Now, while they can't damage Monster X, they could bother him, making it hard for him to fully focus on Camazotz. And thanks to them, they will let Camazotz know where Monster X is before he attacks. And finally, for Camazotz, he can get through Monster X's durability. Now, the biggest issue originally was, can Camazotz get through Monster X's defenses? And while with physical attacks, no, not really. His Sonic Screech, though, now that's a possibility. Now, one fatal flaw of Monster X that is normally his biggest helping factor is the fact that he has multiple heads. In normal battles, these are great as they allow him to shoot multiple beams. But in this battle, they work against him. Now, I don't think it's mind-blowing to think that Monster X can, well, hear. No duh. And as you see later, the smaller heads grow into full heads. But in the Monster X form, they are halves. So with that in place, you could assume Monster X has at least 2, or if on both sides, 4 extra ears. Camazotz with a Sonic Screech would do some serious damage. Now, this doesn't mean a Sonic Screech would be 3 times as loud, but it does mean it would do more mental damage, along with doing damage to each head. Meaning if one of the heads goes down, it's unlikely for the other one to take over. So Monster X possibly having an extra set of ears would lead to increased vulnerability to sound-based attacks. For example, the extra ears could cause more intense reverberations inside of the main skull, meaning there's a higher chance of Camazotz stunning or outright knocking out Monster X. But now onto Monster X. And of course he has his obvious advantage, that being his beam, giving him a better long-range attack. Granted, in this fight, he can't shoot it from too far away, as he won't be able to see where Camazotz is. But if and when he does land it, it will not only do damage, but it will also cause Camazotz immense pain due to the light. So, who wins advantages? Well, it's pretty close, but I'm gonna have to give it to Camazotz. He just has much more useful ones, and make it far harder for Monster X to know where he is throughout the fight. So, with all the points tallied up, we have a score of 6-5.
I would like to point out that, yeah, he has a point. Having multiple ears would obviously make a sonic attack a lot more dangerous to you, but at the same time, when has Camazotz ever dodged a light speed attack? Never. He's never dodged one. Not once in any showing he has in both the canon and non-canon appearances he has. You can argue he's relative to characters who can dodge them, like Kong, which he should be, but he himself has no showings to really confirm that. It's all speculation. Monster X is faster than sound. I know, shocking, right? In reaction speed, he is faster than sound. That doesn't mean he's escaping the full sonic stream, as it's sound. It's still going to affect him regardless, but he can affect the beam part. The part that's really going to hurt him. He can dodge that a lot easier than Camazotz can dodge his attacks. And yeah, I know Camazotz has the storm to hide in, and he has a swarm to alert him if Monster X finds where he is. But at the same time, his reaction speed is so high that he can realistically dodge that attack far more than Camazotz could against his own gravity beams. Which I feel like is something that Goji guy is not really taking into account here, is reaction speed and awareness to what's going on. Because echolocation and poor eyesight doesn't do too well against attacks that arguably don't even have mass, aka light-based attacks. Although light does arguably have mass because it's a lot of science stuff, but regardless, you're not going to get an echolocation. Echolocation relies on sound. He's not going to be able to pick up on the beam flying at him. And if he has poor eyesight, he arguably won't even see it. Making him dodging stuff very iffy on if he could dodge something that's arguably so fast he couldn't even react to it to begin with. So, yeah, Camazotz's attacks would do a lot of damage if he hit the heads. But I don't think it's enough to instantly kill Monster X. Again, he also has Kaiser Ghidorah, which is getting thrown out the window here for reasons because, you know, it's too strong and it would make the fight unfair, even though we're giving Camazotz stuff from crossovers. But yeah, Monster X's beam is also not only so fast that it would be almost impossible for Camazotz to actually dodge a direct hit from it, but it's also light. It's like extremely bright light. That's what it really is. It's basically a laser. So it's going to have the same weakening effect to Camazotz as he's weak to light, extremely weak to light, that Camazotz's special advantage in sound would do to Monster X. They both have ways to perfectly counter each other's weaknesses. But if one's only hurting the other one's brain, and he can dodge it more often, the other one's shooting essentially a bullet at him, a bullet that's essentially made out of poison to him, it's going to be whoever can dodge and resist getting hit the most. And due to the AP difference, which I haven't really got into yet, one beam for Monster X is arguably enough to one-shot Camazotz. Whereas Camazotz, even if he shot his Sonic Scream off 4 times in a row and somehow managed to hit all 4 perfectly, there's a chance Monster X is still at least somewhat conscious and still moving around, because he's a pretty durable guy, even against attacks that would mess him up mentally. He should still be standing. Like, it's not going to instantly destroy his brain. He's going to be somewhat okay. So, yeah, I think Monster X has advantages that aren't being taken into account. Most notably his reaction speed and the fact that his beam is essentially an insta-win move, and I'll get into why in a second.
Monster X takes durability and agility. Camazotz takes speed, abilities, and advantages, and they tie on strength, intelligence, and battle intelligence. So, who wins? Well, given he has more advantages in this battle, allowing him to attack more effectively, I would have to say, with insane difficulty, Camazotz pulls off the win. Camazotz pulls off the win by the skin of his ugly teeth. Camazotz is firstly able to stalemate Monster X in strength. He has a way to get through his durability, and that along with the fact that Camazotz has much better senses of his surroundings and is much faster than Monster X, it'll make it hard for Monster X to land any blows. Now, I do see a world where Monster X could pull off a win, but 6 to 7 times out of 10, I see Camazotz taking the win here.
Okay, now on to why, after watching this entire video, there is another part after this, but I believe he's talking about a fundraiser. I don't know, I just kind of scrolled through the video. It looks like it's some type of charity or something. I guess check that out if you're interested in donating to, I believe it's St. Jude is what he's talking about. I'm not for sure. But, I don't really agree with this take here. As I already explained, he kind of leaves out 2 major factors here, and that's reaction speed, which is very important to determine the winner of any fight that's somewhat close. And also, Kaiser Ghidorah just gets forgotten about or left out on purposely, most likely the second one. So, as to why Monster X in base probably beats Camazotz more than just 6 times out of 10, or not 6, whatever he said, 4 times out of 10, whatever. As to why he beats Camazotz more than he seems to, Goji guy claims he does, is mainly just due to his own reaction speed and his AP, his beam, how powerful it actually is. For starters, Camazotz, as he basically said himself, cannot hurt Monster X physically. He can throw him around a bit, he can lift him up, but at the same time, Monster X could also fling him around fairly easily too. As Camazotz is far lighter than Kong or Godzilla, he's not much heavier than Kumonga, who a weaker kaiju could send flying out above the horizon. Send him flying across the entire country, basically. So, yeah, Monster X isn't losing a physical fight. He's heavier, and he's able to easily match Camazotz at physical strength. Not to mention, Camazotz is at a disadvantage due to being the lighter of the two, and also not being built for melee combat. And then when it comes to ranged combat, he claims Camazotz would win just by essentially spamming the hell out of his Sonic Scream and his Sonic Beam and all that. The reason I don't agree with that is because, as I already explained, Monster X is faster in reaction time. He can dodge Sonic attacks. While the sound's obviously still going to affect him somewhat, if he dodges the big area of effect, he's not going to get heavily disoriented by it. He'll just be annoyed. And then where it really becomes one-sided, in my opinion, is the fact that I don't think Camazotz is really able to dodge or even survive a single ranged attack from Monster X. And Monster X isn't like some of the newer versions of Ghidorah, like the Monsterverse. He prefers ranged combat over melee when he can. He will spam the hell out of his beam if he wants to. And he's perfectly fine in melee, too. I mean, he's the most skilled melee fighting Ghidorah probably ever. He straight up uses martial arts. And if he enters Kizar, I don't think I had to explain to you why Camazotz is dead. I mean, all he has to do is hit him with one gravity beam, and he can just tractor beam him in and then just eat him. But, yeah, the ranged gravity beams are strong enough to essentially one-shot Camazotz. They're not only his weakness, light, but they're also strong enough to rival the same atomic breath that one-shots Gigan, a character who is able to withstand hits from Godzilla melee. So, there's no real question that they couldn't at least injure Camazotz. The fact that it's his weakness and he could shoot these at speeds faster than Camazotz's normal reaction times while flying due to his own natural disadvantages of poor eyesight, his echolocation not being able to register attacks faster than the sound required to actually see with it, and all the other factors playing in, he's not good at dodging ranged attacks from the sky. The only thing Camazotz really has to avoid it is staying in the storm. Which means the only win con I see for Camazotz is just hiding in the storm, spamming beams whenever he can, and then leaving, and then coming back and doing that again. And that's only if Monster X decides to be dumb and never go Kizar form, and also if Monster X is on he's just being bad at dodging that day. Or we just assume that he's not able to dodge attacks he doesn't see coming, despite being faster than the attack that's going to hit him from a range. That's also ignoring that he would be able to hear the attack coming because it's sound. It's a sound attack, and he can pick up on that right before it hits him. And even if it was a second away from hitting him, he could still dodge because he's fast enough to dodge stuff hundreds of times faster. So that's my take here. I don't really want to get overly into why there's a massive power gap here too, because there is. As I already explained, you can argue Dwarf Star level as a baseline for Monster X, and even characters under him, like Final Wars Godzilla, as they're pretty much stated to be at that level in the guides and in other stuff. But there's also the fact that Camazotz, out of all the Alpha Titans, he isn't the strongest. He is in the same category as Rodan, regardless of what Goji Guy says. And yeah, there's a bigger debate to be had on who would win that fight, as Camazotz, in my opinion, would win. I know a lot of people think Rodan wins. Monsterverse Rodan is not a very good Rodan. I'm going to be pretty blunt about that. He's pretty bad in terms of what he can do. I know this official statement says he would beat Camazotz. That statement is implying that Camazotz can't even dodge fire, which seems a little dumb because he's able to dodge Kong, who's faster than light. So, you know, I find I'm a little annoyed by that statement, but regardless, thinking that Camazotz, a lower mid-tier, under characters like Mothra, who I don't think anyone's going to argue Mothra would beat Camazotz. Her main power is light. One God Ray, Camazotz is dead. Especially if it's GXK Mothra, who can send Godzilla flying with a God Ray. So imagine what that would do to a character like 1/3 his weight that is weak to it. Like, specifically weak to it. Yeah, Camazotz is getting, flash fried to nothing. He's also under Ghidorah. I don't have to explain why. He's under Godzilla. I don't think I had to explain why either. And he's under Kong, because current Kong is stronger than Camazotz. At best, you can argue Camazotz somewhat relative to Kong at the very start of GXK. And even then, I don't really think he is, because he fought a Kong without the axe. I feel like if Kong had the axe, he'd probably pull off a win. So he's equal to a Kong without the axe, a GXK level Kong. I don't think I had to explain why Monster X is probably above that. He's above Final Wars Godzilla. This is the same argument that people have. I have a whole video on it where people think that Kong from GVK, the weakened Kong, would beat Final Wars Godzilla. I have a whole video explaining why he wouldn't. It's just a weird debate to try to argue a character who's the top of his verse, in a verse somewhat similar to the Monsterverse pre-GXK, because GXK decided to go crazy with the power levels. And there's going to be that one Thermo Defender down there who's going to be like, well, isn't Amped Ghidorah 100 times stronger in base? No, he's not. I know there's a statement that kind of implies he is. That statement's lying to your face. There is no way in hell he's 100 times stronger than he was in base. Godzilla wouldn't have survived that. But ignoring that whole little debate down there with Thermo versus Supercharged Evolve, no, Camazotz doesn't beat Monster X. There's a huge power gap. There's a massive reaction speed gap. And Camazotz would have to rely solely on attacking him with one type of damage, whereas Monster X could beat him in a melee fight, and he could beat him in a ranged fight by hitting him with even stronger ranged attacks that move faster. So, yeah, if Camazotz gets blown out of the sky, he's dead, because Monster X is going to run up to him, and he's going to beat him to the dirt like he's nothing. If Camazotz tries to stick to the clouds, Monster X is just going to get annoyed and start beam spamming, and one of them is inevitably going to hit Camazotz at some point. Unless you think Monster X just has the worst luck of any kaiju in history and somehow misses every single shot he has. If it somehow devolves into Camazotz lifting Monster X into the sky, Monster X is just going to beat him to death in mid-air and then drag him down with him. Or he's going to shoot him point blank, and that's I don't think anyone's going to argue Camazotz will survive that point blank to the face. And obviously, if Monster X goes Kazar form, I mean, what's Camazotz going to do? He's going to scream at him, he's going to get gravity beamed in the face, and he's going to get forcefully pulled at him at like the speed of light, and he's going to get chucked into the atmosphere. Like, it's not going well. So, yeah, I think Monster X wins this. I know KOTM thinks otherwise. I'll wait to see what his opinion on this is. I'm sure he's going to have at least a pretty good argument. He typically does. But from what I know of both characters, I don't understand why Goji I thought Camazotz wins here. I saw his argument. I understand some of his points. He does have some decent points. Like, Camazotz does have a pretty unique weapon against characters with multiple heads. That is something I didn't really think about going into this. Sonic Scream would definitely hurt Monster X. I'm not saying it wouldn't. But I don't think it's enough to pull off a win off that and just hiding in clouds plus the Hellswarm alone. Not to mention that Monster X could very easily kill the Hellswarm, something Goji I didn't really bring up. If he notices the Hellswarm's helping Camazotz a lot, the Hellswarm isn't dodging repeated blasts from lightspeed attacks. I don't think they could. I don't think there's any evidence to support they could. So yeah, that's my take on this. I mean, no hate to Goji guy. I'd very much prefer you don't go to his comments and start harassing him over this, because that's kind of immature and a little dumb. I mean, it's two fictional kaijus fighting each other. It's nothing to get mad about. It's not worth getting mad about, at least. And if you do go there, I don't want anyone to claim that I condone them going there, because I definitely don't, and I don't want to get in a big argument with another YouTuber, because every time that's happened, it went really dumb and weirdly racist. But ignoring that, that whole scenario, yeah. Goji guy is not a bad guy. Don't go to his channel, start harassing him, because I don't agree that a bat beats up a big bony grandpa dragon. That's not worth being dumb about. It's not worth wasting your time over. So, my opinion, Monster X should win this. He should have won this. I feel like there was some stuff ignored that shouldn't have been ignored. And there was definitely one category, reaction speed, that was kind of left out. And that kind of gave Camazotz a pretty unfair advantage here. Because looking at it from a stat standpoint, you take away Monster X's speed, and reaction time at least, it's definitely goes in Camazotz's favor, even with Monster X's higher stats. Because once you take that away, his only way to counter his pretty much biggest weakness here, that being a very fast opponent that can hide and spam beams that are very powerful against him, kind of goes out the window because he can't dodge them without his high reaction speed. So when that gets ignored, I can see why Goji came to this conclusion. I don't know if he just didn't know to add in reaction speed, or if he just didn't think to factor it in because maybe he thought it wasn't consistent enough. Regardless, without reaction speed, yeah, I get why he came to this conclusion. I 100% get his opinion here, and I do think that it's at least somewhat valid to think this. If you don't like some of the higher ends for Final Wars, I'm not going to get mad at you if you actually believe this, but from a guy who's spent a little too much time power scaling Godzilla, I don't think this ends the way Goji thinks it does. I firmly believe Monster X would win this, even in base. And I definitely think if Kizar Ghidorah was added here, the outcome, even from Goji Guy's argument standpoint, would have been far different. But yeah, that's all for today, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.